Hey, good morning. It's Mark, Medicine with the Metals. This morning we have a guest, Keith Kurlander. Why don't I go ahead and let him introduce himself? Good morning, Keith. How are you, my friend?
I am the co-founder of the Integrative Psychiatry Institute. We have the largest training in terms of the amount of people trained for a comprehensive psychedelic therapy training. So we've trained about 2,200 people in a year-long certification, and we've trained people in all around the world. And it's a great training. It's very exciting. And this organization also, we started it as a way to try and bend the arc on the way mental health care is delivered. So we've got a lot of integrative medicine programs and uh, bringing trauma education to people and things like that. I'm also a coach and therapist and done a bunch of other things in my
We're gonna dive right into all
short
that. Let's
lifetime.
let's first, yeah, let's go. Let's do this. Everybody has an awakening on this path. So I dove into yours a little bit, and let's tell people how you started here. About the age of 19, huh?
Yeah, I like to tell this as sort of my, beginning of my awakening. Definitely is a good term. I was 19. I did psilocybin for the first time. I was in my dorm room alone. Uh, we were having fun with friends, and then I was alone at University of Massachusetts Amherst. Anybody who knows UMass Amherst, there's very high apartment complexes, dorm complexes that are, really high, 22 stories or something. I was close to the top, and I got suicidal uh, during the journey, and kind of came to an awareness that wasn't like a impulsive. I mean, it was impulsive, but it wasn't like something was happening to me on the journey. I didn't know this at the time, but I was just feeling all the trauma and pain in my system that was always there, and got suicidal and was going to jump out the window, and had a sort of hallucination of my 5-year-old sister, who told me not to do it, and got in bed, held on, clutched onto the bed for the rest of the night, survived that. And that kicked me off on a lifelong journey of uncovering what mental health is, what mental illness is, spiritual discovery process. I started in spiritual traditions very quickly. Led me to become a therapist, to eventually founding a education company. So that's the short story.
It really is short in the beginning, and then it turned out to be a long-term goal. So, you know, you're into this therapy, what I like to call aftercare, or I don't like to even call it aftercare, it's integration, Integration is the key to all these medicines. The experience itself is such a small part. And you've created kind of a therapy ecosystem. Is that kind of a good way to put it?
Sure. I like that. Yeah.
So what inspired you to start? What inspired this?
Well, it was a combination of, I suffered from a lot of mental illness, I would say is the best term,
Hmm.
spiritual illness too. And I made my life mission basically about not only healing myself, but very quickly, by the time I was in my early 20s, I was wanting to help other people, where I felt like we could be doing this a little bit better. And so I do this because it came out of my own discoveries of things that help and things that maybe can slow us down. And it brought me to wanting to, share education. And I think that the mental health care system is, it helps in some ways, but it's also very stuck. It's very reductionistic and stuck.
You think that I think the mental health care system's actually broken. So that's my layman's terms of it. I think it's absolutely broken. I think we give way too many meds to sedate people and to just keep them in a almost like a comatic state. And You mentioned a couple of times in this call already about spirituality. I think that's what it all leads to, and I think it leads to also through psychedelics a new paradigm. I always say this, through my experiences, you could always sit there with a therapist and it'd be the same story week after week. Here's your $75 to change. Once you have those psychedelic experiences, now you have something to talk about. Now you have something to gather. Now you have something to move forward with. Now you can really elevate change. Agree with this?
Well, I think the mental health care system is broken. I agree with that. Uh,
Hmm.
I think that there's some uses in it. I mean, when you look at the last 150 years,
Hmm.
there we've done an okay job with severe mental illness,
Hmm.
um, keeping, people were institutionalized in settings many years ago that were really horrific. Um, there's been some advances, but it's broken in the sense that what you're saying, which is like really the go-to solution now is medication. Um, and it doesn't even work that often. I mean, it works sometimes for some people. I know people that they're stuck in a certain way, they take medication and like they bump out, they're on it for a year or two, and that was that, and they move on. And but that I wouldn't say that's even the norm. I think the norm is that um, you're in a kind of you're a science lab experiment with medication, and you're ups and downs, and you're tweaking medications over years, and you're not dealing with what's causing the actual issues in you. So um, I think in that way it's broken. Um, and that's a problem. We're having increasing issues here in terms of mental health issues on this planet that increasing or just things are it's a strong moment to be alive. So we need different types of help. So I do think psychedelic therapy is a great tool. um, it's not for everybody, but it's for many people. Could be a great tool, could be a really transformative experience and tool. And the way it's researched is typically as a disruptor, in terms of therapy research, like it's a disruptor. It's meant to be done less than a handful of times to disrupt, the ways you're stuck, and reset some things in your brain,
We
and
jump
then
into
go
that a
to
little bit. So you say,
sure
it's- you say, it's meant to be a reductor, right? Is that what you're saying?
disruptor,
So a
disruptor.
disruptor. So we're supposed to disrupt our current events in life. So are those big journeys you're talking about, like with psilocybin, ayahuasca, any of these kind of medications?
Well, I mean, it can be ayahuasca, but I guess if I'm talking about the research, we'd be looking more at ketamine,
Hmm.
MDMA,
Right.
psilocybin,
Correct.
DMT,
Hmm.
uh, ibogaine a little bit now.
Amazing medicine right there too.
Yeah, yeah. So
Hmm.
so I think, but yeah, generally psychedelics, if they're done therapeutically, um, and you've limited risk in terms of like what you're coming to, what the if you're coming with contraindications, you've limited those risks that some people have. Then generally speaking, it seems to be a great disruptor. It has it's depending on the medicine, there's biological impacts that are very helpful. Um, and then also the psychological spiritual disruption, where obviously, like, if you're stuck, you need a disruption to change. You
Yeah.
could do the slow path to change where it's not a disruption, but that can take decades. So um and again, it's not for everyone, but when it's right, it can be extremely powerful, and you can disrupt something in one journey, and then go integrate it, and actually see changes, over, in some place, and sometimes overnight you could start to see changes. I mean, with ketamine, you could start to see suicidal thinking go away right after your journey, during your journey. That can happen. So yeah, that's I don't know if that answered your question,
I
but
like this part of the subject too, because I really think this really entertains the audience too a lot because I think this is where a lot of people are at right now. Like, what do I do? How do I do it? You know, and like you say, it isn't for everyone. And I love how you use the word disruption. I mean, in this space in a long time, and I think that's exactly what happens. You disrupt something in your life, you disrupt what's going on, and you see a new paradigm where you can maybe shift this way and do this. But, it's pretty interesting. Like, I'm a firm believer of also not doing psychedelics too often, but I'm also a huge proponent of microdosing. So I'm caught in the middle there. So I think it's a little bit different. I mean, these huge journeys and microdosing, we'll get into that a little bit later. But I think what you say is makes the most sense. I mean, it's like let's go on a journey. Let's go on however you want to call it, a healing benefit. And then let's really integrate this. Man, we see so much of this in the medicine space. Keep chasing that journey, but what are we really chasing? We're chasing that high. And there's no fun. I don't think there's any fun. Like, at least for me, and I've had many psychedelic experiences, there's never been something that I'm like, yes, this is what I want to do today. That's never really happened. So
Mhm.
I love how you say that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, typically, like you're saying, you're introducing a challenge when you take a psychedelic. Um,
Hmm.
you're introducing a challenging experience. I mean, of course, there are journeys. There are people actually that have a different problem, which is they have a hard time getting disrupted, even from medicine. So, you probably come across the people of taking ayahuasca 20 times and they're still like, I don't really feel much. And they're drinking it all
Yeah.
night long. That's a different type of constitution.
Mhm.
That's hard to disrupt. But
Mhm.
but yeah, typically speaking, like you're saying, like I think most people do a psychedelic experience and there's a challenging component to it, especially
Yeah.
if they take a big enough dose. Um, there's typically a challenging component. So you're introducing challenge in a way that you haven't seen before. Um, and that, then you get to wrestle with a new challenge, which brings about, hopefully, if we have the right support, uh, we come out with a new perspective, right? Now,
Mhm.
there's also just openings that aren't as challenging, as you know. I
Right.
mean, you could have ego dissolution experiences and mystical experiences that don't feel challenging. They actually just feel relieving,
Mhm.
and integrating right from having those. Those happen a lot on psychedelics also.
Right. And I think like these medicines are profoundly different. Like you mentioned, like four medicines right in the beginning that I really think. I mean, we go to ketamine, we go to psilocybin, we go to 5-MeO, bufo. We go to, I can't put that iboga in this class though, but those are really mind on the medicine. When you talk about medicines of iboga and you talk medicines of ayahuasca, I think there's a little bit deeper connection. I think something and you're more medically experienced here. And I don't know how to say it. I can only say it in the experiences. I think there's something that happens in those experiences that goes a little deeper, that really gets to the root trauma and causes these purges and whatever these purges are, however they are. But I think for those medicines, it is some sort of, hmm, entity. I don't know what it is. It's just something that it's a different kind of experience for sure. It's a soul. It feels more soulful, those experiences, when it comes from those plants, if that
Mm,
makes sense.
mm. Yeah, I- I've heard a lot of stories in my role, and I've experienced most of these medicines you're talking about.
Mhm.
And I'm a little unique. There's every medicine's unique, but
Mhm. You're right.
particularly if you throw MDMA in here, it's a completely different thing.
For
Um,
sure.
but I tend to have similar challenging experiences across medicines. I'm a little unique in that way. Like,
Mhm.
I don't tend to um, have as much differentiation. Now, ayahuasca it's sort of strength. It tends to be strength for me versus, I mean, ketamine is not classically a psychedelic. So
Mm,
ketamine is very unique in that it's a dissociative. But when I started like experience when I like psilocybin um San Pedro or ayahuasca or like, I tend to just have a challenging experience. Everyone's unique and so if I wouldn't know which medicine I'm on if I wasn't told, um, because the challenging experiences are kind of similar for me.
similar.
That's not
Hmm.
common for most people. Most people do have very sort of could differentiate the medicine's experiences, I think, from people I know. Um, so yeah, but I would say ayahuasca is particularly strong in a certain way around what you're saying. It gets to the root and yeah, I've definitely had a lot of interesting mystical experiences on that um, make me very curious about how this all works.
Mm, it does.
More so than psilocybin, even for me. I've had I've had sort of like mystical, universal experiences, but with ayahuasca, I've had more of the thing you were referring to, like sort of entity stuff, and I have had that a little bit more in ayahuasca.
Can we talk to the audience out there a little bit? How does psilocybin work? How does psilocybin actually work through the when it's consumed?
Essentially, it goes into the receptors that, it sort of mimics serotonin. So it fits into the receptor. And then the way that it expresses itself is different than the expression of serotonin. So it downstream, which I am not a neuroscientist, and this gets very detailed, and I could not even explain it. Downstream, it starts to send signals differently to your brain, so your brain starts behaving in a different way. So that's like the highest level, simplest level. What that does specifically, the one of the more important networks to be aware of is the default mode network, which is a network and of regions of the brain, how they communicate together. um and it you could think of it as like that network being sort of rigid and held together by, let's say, concrete. It um it makes it more like water, and the way it starts communicating. And so your ego can dissolve, which is, where some of our sense of self is, some of it's being generated from that network. And um, and then other downstream things happening around hallucinations and that kind of thing. But the default mode network is a major component in terms of experience of self and other and the world and time and space. Um, so it changes the way that network's behaving.
Will it do that immediately or is it over time?
No, it does it when you're. It does it as soon as it starts to take effect in your body. That starts to happen. I mean, it's going to have an impact downstream in your brain. How much impact and what that actually subjective experience is conditional to that journey. Um, might not.
Is that where most of the changes take place though? Is that where you really want to start?
Well, if you're asking, is that where the benefits come from in
Sure,
terms of
that's the
in
question.
terms of a journey? So one, yeah, that's some of the benefits. There's also biological benefits, but that's some of the
Mhm.
benefits, which is like your psychological identity and constructs. Um, the default mode network is one of the places that is being altered that allows you to perceive yourself, others, and the world around you in a different way. And that is one of the big aspects of the benefits that happen.
Oh,
Yeah. Um there's also the neuroplasticity, like psilocybin um causing potentially both dendritic pruning and sprouting, but like this um, basically this way in which the brain is very changeable over time, and it starts to sort of maybe help remove some connectivity that we don't need any longer and form new connectivity.
And it does. I think I think that's what people are looking for. I think, I think we've always been told that our brain doesn't grow and our brain stops producing. I mean, it never does, really. I mean, these medicines really do what you just said they do. They kind of, am I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do they create new neural pathways? Are they opening up the 2A receptor?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that new neural pathways are being created. I think that's fair. I mean, new neural pathways are being created all the time.
Or
So, yes,
maybe
I think it's
what we're
fair to
using
say
it
that
at,
that
right.
there are new neural pathways coming out of the experience for sure. I think that's fair.
I like to understand this more too, because like if we're creating new neural pathways and our thought processes are positive, aren't those new neural pathways going to be more positive? Or am I getting too deep?
Uh, well, I wouldn't be the person to be able to get really geeky on that to answer it.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that um, sustaining um, new ways of thinking is hard, even after a psychedelic experience. It's
Oh,
actually not simple. Like the old ways of thinking will creep back in. Sometimes
for sure.
as soon as you're coming down from the medicine,
Hmm.
sometimes weeks or months later. But
Yeah.
um, the brain has trenches in it. So those things will come back. And that's the whole concept of integration, which is like trying to, have the new inform the old.
No.
Because the old doesn't go away. It's not erasing. This isn't erasing ways of thinking. I don't think that's not my experience. It doesn't just zap it out of you forever. Um,
No.
those things still exist. I think I think you can experience new ways of thinking and new ways of relating to your thoughts.
Mm. Oh, I know
Mm,
you can because I've done it.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I, I, I mean, it's a process, and like we always say, it's like none of this is quick, but you know, year, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, at the 5-year level, I could
Yeah.
never look at myself 5 years ago and say, I I can't think that. I don't. I mean, you're right because the memory's still there, the thought's still
Yeah.
there. But do I ever think that way again? I can never think that way. There's no way. I mean, so yes, I think you retrain the thoughts to thoughts, and I think that's a big part of integration. I mean,
Mhm.
one of the best medicines that I've ever done was Iboga. So, like, I mean, Iboga is kind of a one and done medicine, 2 or 3 times, I mean, that's a medicine. I really, even after 2 years, have a really difficult time. Like, what really happened to me? But I know something happened because it kind of reset. Like, that's all I can say. It was
Yeah.
reset something, but I could never really explain. But I can see that medicine being so beneficial because like, my thoughts and memories were, like, gone. Like, I was like, "Wait a minute, I can't feel that. What the fuck just happened?" That it was just something about that medicine's like, that's not something to play around with, but that's definitely I can definitely see something in that medicine more than any of these others. It's something about that
Mhm.
one that's the other ones you wanna go experience more, you wanna catch more. That one, you're like, "Wait a minute, something just happened, and I don't know if I want that again." But it was something. So
Yeah.
what is that? What do you think
Well,
of Boga is? What do you
that
think?
happened to me every time I did medicine. So, I haven't done a lot of medicine in the last 10 years. I did a good amount from age 20 to 40, 40 to
Yeah,
50, I haven't done much. Um,
yeah.
but no,
And a
that
Boga's a
happens to me
different
every
breed.
time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. A Boga's a different medicine though. Really, really, and it's really, really coming out really, I don't know, differently now because I think that the cure rate for opioid addiction is just astronomical. I think in the 80 some percents. And, there's not too many medicines out there that will do that. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to try to find something that's actually circumventing how big pharma's trying to hook us into something. So, not a big fan of big pharma.
Oh, the opioid crisis is obviously very sad and scary, and
Mhm,
um, it's clearly the modern one of the modern addictions of choice. Um,
mhm,
uh, and yeah, I mean, but you got to go deeper into. I mean, these medicines when they help like that, let's say iboga or ibogaine, um, it's again like that. First of all, that is a unique um, process where with the withdrawals, which is interesting off of opiates, um, where it can actually help that. But the I think that a part of what we see as near death experiences um, sometimes allow people to. That's one thing that happens sometimes when you go to such a strong psychedelic. You kind of face your mortality in a little bit of a and the fragileness of life in just a little deeper way. And that causes people to be willing to look at the hard stuff. Um, and then some of these medicines like ayahuasca and I will go like sometimes you just can't escape the hard stuff, even if you want to. Just there's no way not to see it. Um, so it's like you may have spent 20 years addicted to a opioid escaping the hard stuff in yourself, even though you're still in a hard struggle. You're trying to not see something, and then some part of you is like, well, I'm going to go do this thing, I'm ready, but you have no idea that you just spent 20 years being like, I'm not ready, and then you're like, now I'm ready, and now I'm actually going to look at everything I've been not wanting to look at for 20 years. I mean, that's an intense process. Think about that. That's very intense for a person to. It's cool that a person can actually be like, I'm ready. And then they go do that. And then they see what they've been avoiding for 20 years. That's cool and hard.
mhm. Both. You're absolutely right. But it's very gratifying, I have to admit. I've been down the route, so I mean that's why we do the things we do, I think, today, because you know, death is a pretty mysterious thing to people. Death is pretty scary to a lot of us, and I think a lot of these medicines actually bring you to that. I think 5-MeO brings you to death. I mean, that is my clinical opinion that it brings you to that's death at the fullest extent. So when you see death to that level, I think you can live your life in a different way for sure. So, and I know the different ways integration. So how do you prepare clinicians or people to work with psychedelics in the way you do? How do you prepare people?
Um, well, our program takes them through everything from research and indications and contraindications and safety and ethics and touch and how to do touch safely and how to prepare someone. So that's a whole process of, what goes into preparation that's helpful. When is it harmful? When you're saying too much? Um, how are you helping a person set their intentions and explore why they're really doing this? How do you help them if they're new to this get to the bottom of why they're really doing this? Um, then we take them through the different types of scenarios that might happen on medicine and how to work with that, how to help enhance the session, how to not get in the way of the session, and how to not resort to therapy techniques that might actually distract or suggest too much to the person under the influence of a psychedelic. And then of course integration, which is different types of ways of helping people make sense of what they experienced. And the big piece with integration is how do you walk across the bridge from an experience into actually changing your life or the way you perceive your life? How do you walk across that bridge? Because experiences turn into memories. So if you don't walk across the bridge of actually turning it into behavior, uh, motivation, drive, perception, perspective, and all you have is a memory of the experience. And it might be like, "Oh, there's something there that was cool, and I feel it," and that's where it ends, I feel something about that. So integration is about transitioning from an experience, really from a memory, because you're working with the memory that's still living in you, after the experience, and translating that into changing a number of things like your perception, your behavior, your identity, and helping it create a generative process. So that part's really important, obviously, or else we just have a memory, which is fine. We've got a lot of memories.
Or
Um,
use we are on top of the same page because me and my wife say it all the time. It's just an experience without the integration. And so run over that again. What do you think integration is? Because it's such a thrown out word out here, but you know, I kind of connected a lot of what how you said it is. It's kind of say how you said it.
I see integration as the bridge from a memory of an experience into a change in your life. Um, the memory has to get translated into behavior. It has to get translated into perception of self. It has to get translated, into drive, meaning that like you're driven through a day to do things, or you wouldn't do anything,
Of
right?
course,
So that drive comes from multiple places. One is from survival, but the other is from values. So you want to translate the experience to help inform your values. You don't have to worry about it informing your survival instinct. That's already there. Everyone has that.
for sure.
So,
But that drive
s-
is really there strong in the beginning after an experience. I mean,
it can be.
that was my biggest thing. It's really strong. And, you know, because you're right, it is just memories. It is memories. It could be, I mean, some memories don't even make sense. So, but the drive is there. You need to keep that drive going. And if you keep that drive going, man, the changes that could take place are just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that you have to be very aware of is you can also um you can rebound into actually amplifying old behaviors that weren't serving you very well, or amplifying old ways of thinking without good integration. That can happen. So like because you're going up a little, even though psychedelics can be a very challenging experience,
Yep.
just the way you're messing with brain chemistry, like you're there's part of it is going up, so you got to come down, right? So because you're leaving your baseline of reality
Yeah.
to go
Mhm.
into an alternate reality, and you have to come back to baseline reality. And so sometimes you could come back fast and hard
Mhm.
without good integration, and you can end up actually having sort of it look like rebound effect of like, well, now I'm like doing more of this thing I don't want to be doing. And so I think this is integration. Integration is like, how do we land the plane softly? How do we do the soft landing? Um, Slowly coming from down from that experience to a new experience that we start to shape and change a little, and enough that it was like, okay, that was had a major impact in my life. That really changed me in some way, That's hopefully down the road, you're saying that was one of the most positive experiences of my life. Hopefully you're saying that. Some people might be saying it was one of the most negative experiences of my life, and they need more integration if that's what they're saying.
Mhm.
Because
I don't see that
we
so
need
much.
integration around anything we're saying is a negative
For
experience.
sure. For sure. You know, it's something that's
Mhm.
the biggest key that's I think missing on this whole psychedelic. I don't want to call it a revolution because it's always been here. We just took it away for a while. So, that's something about these medicines. They've been here forever. They've been here to the beginning of time most of the time. Like most of our stories and biblical readings and so on and so forth have been done through these psychedelic revolutions or these psychedelic journeys or whatever one you want to call them. But, you know, I think clinical wise, we stopped studying them in the 60s, and we really did ourselves a huge injustice by doing that. And, what we did it for, but they're back now. And I think they're back with such a different reverence because you have all kinds of people now looking at psychedelics. Okay. It's not like that. We're going to jump off the building. People don't believe that no more because it doesn't happen. But what is happening is definite shifts. And there's a huge shift actually after COVID. And I think there's a huge definite shift of people wanting more knowledge and change. I mean, I think people want to see something different. And you've said a lot on this call, spirituality, spirituality. You find a difference because I think we do. I know I don't say we think we do find it. Spirituality is such a difference than religion. Spirituality is like a connection, a knowing that there is definitely something out there that is bigger and stronger than us. And religion's just a bunch of garbage. So I think we find a spirituality, at least I have, on these medicines. And I think it's been something that a lot of things that you said have really woken in my head. Like, man, it really does happen. And that does do that. Like, I like that bridge connection really makes a lot of sense. So, what I'm going to jump into is what do you think ethically is challenging us right now from going to the next step with this therapy in the United States? Where do you think's the biggest challenge?
Well, the biggest challenge to reach more people was the rejection from the FDA of MDMA in August of last year. That was the biggest
Why did they
challenge in
do
the
that, you think? What was the reason behind that?
well,
Because it was there.
they listed a bunch of reasons, but one thing that happened there was a sort of small group of people, I think they had a nonprofit that sort of wrote a big paper about their concerns that um, were and it definitely had an impact on the FDA's committee. Um, I think because some of the things that they highlighted was from what was that group was saying, um, and that was a small group of people. That wasn't a huge group of people, um, but they were saying a few things. The study design. It's hard to mask a psychedelic. Well, we know that they were in constant communication about the study design, that it's hard to mask a psychedelic as a placebo, versus a placebo. Um, so doing a blinded study is actually challenging with a psychedelic, but it's also challenging to do a blinded study with painkillers, in my opinion. Um,
Mm,
so that's okay. And there's other medications that you take that have a strong effect, and it's hard to mirror that effect. But
mhm.
okay, that's one thing, and then they had some issues with some other details in the study, and then they had issues with not enough safety data in certain ways. I think it's, people are nervous. They're not everybody's ready. I don't think it's like a deep conspiracy theory. I think that people are stuck in a lot of old stigmas and in their head that they don't haven't questioned and
Keith,
done the
what's this?
work.
If we ask them this question, Keith, what is an old stigma? If you can show me one clinical death from psilocybin, can you show me one? Could they prove one? See,
Well, this
that's
was
where,
MDMA, not
okay,
psilocybin.
but okay,
So
I got it. I
psilocybin
understand.
actually might
Yeah,
it's important because psilocybin
yeah.
actually might go through before MDMA. So
Hmm.
that's an important distinction.
You look
Um,
at these studies and they're just so vague. Like they're just like a small group of people you just mentioned. Like they were probably negatively against MDMA, but we know the positives to it. When is it going to be up to the people's choices and common sense? Almost after a while, it's almost
well,
like
it is
we
up
go
to the
through these.
people's choices in
Yeah,
Colorado and Oregon. They voted in
right, true.
psilocybin.
Yeah, they
That's
did.
what I mean. The state is where you get people's choices,
Yeah, I guess you're
right?
right.
Versus the federal. So
Yeah,
at the state level, it is up to people's choices through voting, and that's why we have psilocybin in 2 states now, and we've got them more than 2 states. I mean, you've got other states with Iowa and New Mexico, and I mean, we're going to see a lot of states with psilocybin. I think. Um,
so you think psilocybin's going to be? I think it. You think MDMA was that way because of the Hmm. The the more medicinal factor of it, or
Well, I think
the
you have
more
to look at the history. I mean, MDMA is a more recent drug that moved to Schedule 1 in the early 80s. More recent. I mean, the other ones weren't that far behind. But it sort of had this, there was this big reaction in the early 80s to mid 80s with MDMA and the rave scenes. And um, so there was a lot of like media there, painting, pictures on MDMA. And some of that MDMA wasn't even MDMA. It was,
mhm,
ecstasy. It was a mix of other stuff.
mhm.
Um, and then there's concerns when trying to shift a cultural view on something, and
Mm.
but it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I mean, we might see MDMA approved in the next 2 years. um
My concern is this: 1,000 people die from Vicodin every day, but it's still approved. My concern is you try to get off Klonopin, you'll die. I mean, to try to get off, it's just that's my concern. So, how is natural? How is natural? Almost every Schedule One plant, almost every plant is a Schedule One. It's like, how does this even happen? It's like, what do we do? Where do we just make this whole switch? And it's so convoluted because I've never seen anybody die from cannabis, but we still, we, we, we made this the most evil drug there ever was. But now look at the flip of the switch. I think it's more of a common sense thing, and I love the science behind everything. And I love this. And I think that's what a lot of people respect. But, I look at just 8 years of being in this space, and I see hundreds of thousands of people get well. Okay. I see them get well underground. And, I don't see too many get sick or die. And I look at those studies and I say, why aren't they studying that? And maybe I'm kind of like out here and out there, but I mean, it's just common sense to me. It's like, okay, nobody's dying, but you're dying on this. It's bizarre to me. But, that's why I think we do the things we do, because I think at the end of the day, I think the underground here is probably going to be stronger than the government controlled. Do you agree or not? I mean, it's already becoming stronger.
well, it always has. Well, right now it's Schedule 1, so it's all underground. So
Right.
other
That's
than
true.
ketamine other
Keith,
than
you got me at every
ketamine
game. Yeah.
so
Right. You
I
are.
mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is right now, is
Yeah.
underground. Other
True.
than
True.
ketamine, right?
Hmm.
Ketamine can be prescribed, but um it's still also being done underground in some places. But I mean, other than Colorado and some countries like Amsterdam, and like it is all underground. Um but underground doesn't one thing I would say is like the underground is like guerrilla warfare, but it's not gonna, like, change the planet overnight. Like, we have to get this above ground to change the planet. We need to get this
You're right.
accessible to people who don't
Right.
identify.
Guerrilla warfare. It is underground. It is guerrilla warfare. But you're
Yeah.
right. We have to bring it to the surface. I mean,
Yeah,
because
because
we
most
have
people don't
so many
identify
surface.
with the underground. They don't
You're right.
identify as themselves as
Yeah.
aligning with
Truth.
that culture. And
Yeah.
so that's fine. It's cool. Like, that culture is great, but it's not going to make the change on this planet that we need.
Yeah.
We have to get this accessible to them. This is one tool. I mean, it's not the only tool we're going to need.
Yeah.
It's,
You're right too. It is only psychedelics is only one tool. I look at it like everybody should be doing it because it helped me. Something helped me, something helped this person. I see the benefits, but I also see the dangers in it. I also see, you know, not every not everybody should do psychedelics. That's for sure. But I
Not
mean,
everybody
I can
should. I
tell
mean,
you,
there are
yeah,
there
for
are
sure.
there are some things that can happen, and
Yeah,
luckily it's not the majority. But there are things that are. I mean, first of all, people have killed themselves on psychedelics. That does happen, but it's rare.
for sure. Very.
People can leave psychedelics and have very altered perceptions for a while. That can happen, um, which is, it's not. the most common condition, but it can be anywhere from 5 to 15% of people or even higher sometimes. It's hard to know. Seems like it happens a little more with psilocybin and LSD than others,
And
where they have like this, it's this post-perceptual issue where they feel altered and it's very disorienting and it goes away usually. Sometimes it doesn't. There are things to know about that happen to people. But the good news is, especially with the plant medicines, like the toxicity levels are, it's like it's not so much overdose issues with the organic ones, except you do have issues. We have to be with ibogaine is a different one. There
yeah.
are issues there. Uh, but so there are things to know. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not a, like a free lunch. There's no
I
free
think
lunch
so
on
too.
this planet.
I think you're no, you're absolutely correct because, but I think there's also could be a definite great union between the educated and the informed. And I mean by the informed, the people that have been to those experiences, and the educated that would never touch them. And we can definitely help both of those here. I think we can definitely help each other, like help others understand these medicines so much better. And I think we need that kind of collaboration. I think we really need that. I mean, we don't need the hippie dude out there, yeah, man, do the much. We need like maybe my wife and me, people that are like, listen, I understand psychedelics to the level. I did a lot. I haven't done a lot. I understand that there's like maybe 3 times a year big journeys. I understand that it's not about the medicine. It's about the integration. And that's where it all that's where it all comes from. What the medicines actually, I believe they do, is they open portals. So they open portals at different parts of your body or different plan, and your portals are open. I think at the beginning they're more open and they're more subject to anything else before. I think as time goes on, you don't need as much medicine. I think the portals open as they are. But you truth, things come back and things will always circle back. It could be 2 weeks, 3 months. This is why we need that integration. So where do you see all the field of psychedelic therapy going in the next, let's say, 5 years? Think it's a
Well, the
growing
whole
little.
well, it's
Mhm.
been growing, but the hope we're sort of at a little bit of a plateau, I think, right now. The hope is
Sure.
that in 3 years from now, the hope is we get an FDA approval on psilocybin, hopefully a return to MDMA, we get an approval on that. That would be the
Mhm.
hope. If that happens, then I would say the next 3 to 5 years after that, we start to see, you know, all around the country, the clinic down somewhere in your town or city, or let's say in your town, in your city, there's many like clinics where you can go and get treated. Uh, that's the that would be the hopeful uh, 5 year 5 to 10 year thing, and I would say there's a good possibility. There's a lot of different angles that this could get through in terms of different studies right now. We've got multiple psilocybin studies that could get through, like different biotech. We've got the MDMA. Hopefully, they figure out how to get that back.
You're
It's
gonna be on
probably
that band.
that's
I can
probably
see
another
that.
study.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
then, after that, you've got an LSD study that will maybe see LSD by 2029 if it holds. Again, with most the studies actually don't make it through the FDA, not just psychedelics. So there's some hope here. Um, and then you've got other things in phase two stuff like 5-MeO, and you've got eventually an ibogaine thing coming up. So um 10 years from now, maybe we're in a conversation like, holy cow, we've got medicines that are federally approved for use now, medical use across the country. And you'll see a lot of other countries follow. If we get those through, you will see a lot of the countries follow because there's many countries that sort of follow our approvals.
What what three beautiful medicines to have approved right there? I mean, psilocybin, 5-MeO, and iboga. Or ibogaine. You can never really get iboga, but those three would be. I was just wonder how you would do the 5 MEL. That would be pretty interesting. But the other two I can almost see as basic. You can maybe sit at home, like at home. A lot of these, like psilocybin, especially, I think is like if you could teach somebody, a lot of this stuff can be done at home. Some of the stuff can be. I just couldn't understand you doing a 5 MEO experience at home by yourself. There's some
Well, these
medicines that are
approval
just
these
too
FDA
spiritual for me.
approvals will not be at home. Um,
Yeah, they'll
I
be in
don't
clinical.
think I think they'll be in a setting somewhere. I don't, at least for a long time. Ketamine is different because ketamine you can get prescribed to um you and in your home.
Hmm. Yeah.
And the only reason that that is actually that way is because it's generic ketamine that's been around for 30 years more for other reasons, that then we discovered were good for mental health. And so because it's because of the way that particular medicine um, it doesn't have extra safety precautions, so people can actually prescribe it through compounding pharmacies and you can get it to your home. But like the ketamine that actually went through the FDA trials for mental health recently, the nose spray, that you can't do in your home actually. So it's funny. You actually have to be in a clinic setting. So I think it'll be more like that.
Well, there's a big difference between an injection and taking a lozenge. So, especially when it comes to ketamine. I mean, there's not, you can't even compare the two. So, I think injections is the only way to go when it comes to ketamine. But I've seen the profound changes with people with injections. So, it's like profound, like after the first dose, like four big injections of ketamine. I mean, it's life changing. I've seen it. I've just seen it. So it's probably one of the best medicines I have ever seen for depression, for for really hardcore depression. It's like the best I've ever seen.
Mm,
It's pretty amazing how it works. Pretty
yeah. I
amazing.
mean, something like 70% of people will have a 50% reduction in their symptoms like
Hmm.
overnight. Um, you don't see those rates with most things.
You don't see them with anything. Really,
So,
there's nothing that
yeah.
does that. It's
But that
pretty.
was mostly studied, those numbers are mostly, I mean, it's probably similar with IM with injections, but we don't have a lot of studies to know, but that's mostly IV studies, but it's probably similar with IM would be my guess. And then there's some studies, and then sublingual, even less studies, and the bioavailability is way lower. So that's why you're saying it's so different. The bioavailability is so much lower.
Yeah. I'm really fascinated about this whole space. I think it's like well needed, I mean, mental health has been like, wait a minute, we're stigmatized in mental health years ago. We couldn't even talk mental health. Oh, what, stay away from that. But it's part of our wholeness. If we don't have mental health, do we have anything left? I mean, we have to have our mental clarity to be physically embodied. So I like the way, I think there's a big shift happening. I mean, I really feel a big shift happening to mental clarity, mental health, people wanting to understand their mental. I can believe stuff beyond that. I think things come from lineages, things come from DNAs, but I'm no scientist, but I believe a lot different than other people believe. So I just have my beliefs that I think there's a big shift and a big change to mental clarity. And I hope psychedelics play a part in it, which I know they will. And I'm glad to have been introduced to you. You're a pretty knowledgeable guy. So why don't we talk about, before we end here, why don't we talk about what you do in your clinic and tell the audience a little bit about that?
Our current clinic is actually not open to the public right now. We're only we had a public facing clinic open for many years. So we saw thousands of patients. Our clinic right now is actually not open to the public. It's a teaching site now. Um, our institute is the main thing that's going on, and um, that you could check that out at psychiatryinstitute.com. It's a lot of education, and there's a podcast there to check out, the Higher Practice Podcast. We talk about psychedelics and all things mental health. Um, so that's the best place to go to see what we're up to, what I'm up to.
You hopeful for the future here?
That's a good question. Am I hopeful for the future? You mean in a very broad way, brushstroke way? Am I
Yeah.
hopeful for the future?
Yeah.
Um, well, you have a few more minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think we're at a very critical point right now in human history because of technology. So, prior to now, we prior to now, now being, let's say, 50 years, 100 years, um, we couldn't have eradicated ourselves. We couldn't, there was a lot of problems on the planet that we were struggling with, but our biggest issues were environmental in terms of eradicating ourselves off the planet. But we're at a now in a moment in history with technology where we could really cause a problem. Um, Environmental problems, social problems. Um, we could eradicate ourselves with weapons. We could eradicate ourselves with not being careful with artificial intelligence.
Oh,
Um, so, and then we could, hurt the environment in a way where we could really, really screw up the planet for some period of time that is meaningful to us. Um, it would course correct itself after us. Um, so, uh, I think, am I hopeful? I think that we're at a tipping point that we, tipping point could be hundreds or even thousands of years, but it's not a million years. So we're at a tipping point of technology where we're either going to learn how to come together as a species through our innovation, or we're not. And that, I don't think that's clear yet. Um, it's not completely clear yet. I mean, we could be in our heads and sort of fantasize like, oh, well, evolution says we always come together. I mean, I don't think evolution says we always come together. Um, that's I don't have any proof of that in history. So I think that I am hopeful that there will be enough um, innovative thinkers and groups of people that will create things that cause us to come together. I'm hopeful about that. Um, and I'm just hoping that that happens faster than the potential um, um, kind of disintegration of humanity. Because
you know what?
it's a tipping point. I don't think we have
Mhm.
actually answered the question yet, but I'm mostly hopeful that I think we're going to figure it out, because I think that it doesn't take that much technology to solve some problems of what's dividing us. I think
Mhm.
actually that there's going to be some technology that can really help. The biggest problem is an internal problem. I mean, at the end of the day, the
Mm.
biggest problem is how we perceive each other. So
Absolutely.
um, that problem might get solved much quicker than we think in terms of technology to solve that problem. Psychedelics are still a very primitive version to solve that problem. They're a it's like, it's a it's a it's a hammer. It's not a
Mm.
laser. So we will get to laser. The question is how quickly will we get to some laser interventions in the next 100 to 300 years? I think we probably will. I think if we don't, technology is going to take off too fast we're not going to catch up enough spiritually and psychologically to what we're creating. And
Mm.
we're going to divide more. So I'm hopeful. I think we're going to actually solve the issue quick enough, but I'm not convinced, because I don't think you can be convinced at this moment in humanity. I think you're convinced once you've done it and you've solved it.
we've never done. I mean, but you said it made a very poor. When have I mean, think, when have we ever come together? Ever? Never.
Well,
I mean,
we haven't come together
9/11 for about
enough.
10 minutes.
Well, we haven't
I
come
mean, but
together enough. I mean, if you
right.
look at human history, we're obviously cooperating, or we wouldn't be able to do this cool thing on Zoom right
Truth.
on,
True.
online right now. So there's
Right.
definitely been a lot of cooperation, but not enough to potentially stop us from destroying ourselves. There's not enough cooperation yet. So, and there's a lot
Interesting.
of, and I'm saying as the technology curve increases, you see cooperation, but you also see a lot of division um, because of it. And so we don't know where this is going, but
Well,
hopefully we're here to last. And then if you get into futurist like thinkers and you start looking at talking about where are we headed, like at some point we can't be on this planet. You can't Species can't survive on its own planet forever. So maybe it'll be cool enough that way down the line, humans will live long enough, they'll cooperate enough, they'll evolve. They won't be suffering the way we suffer. They won't be in the same struggle we're in around how do we fucking be happy in a day. Like that's a fucking primitive struggle. Think about that. It's primitive.
you're
And
right.
that's where we are. We are in the struggle of can I be happy today or not? That's
But
what we're dealing with.
is that why we're here though? I mean,
Well, it's
why are
why
we
we're here
you know,
now, but one
eh,
day we won't be in that.
exactly.
If we last
Right.
long enough, we won't be in that struggle, and we last long enough, we won't be on this planet. That's for
Mm,
sure. Um,
for sure.
if we last long enough, we probably won't even be in human flesh if we last long enough. So we'll be in something else. I mean, that when you think about futurist thinking, like it's obvious we're going to keep evolving. This isn't the end of the
For
line
sure.
of evolution for a human. Like,
It can't be. What is
well,
next?
everything evolves if it lasts, if it
And
doesn't get extinct. But this is the conversation you're asking me about. Am I hopeful
yeah.
about are we going to one day be extinct? We don't
Mhm.
know because we face other extinction issues too. We have to cooperate enough to deal with an asteroid, right? It has happened on this planet before that if it would have
Mhm.
hit now, we would be fucked the way it hit the
Mhm.
dinosaurs. So we have to cooperate enough over time to solve these problems, right? If we want to survive this thing. And then the biggest thing we have to solve right now is how do we just cooperate better? How do we get along better? And that my whole work has been you start with yourself because we don't have the technology to just hand it out to the masses. So my whole journey is like you got to just start with yourself. That's that right now, evolutionarily, like I'm going to focus on that. That's our best tool is yourself. So I think that starting with yourself is it's a spiritual imperative for the future of our species. If you don't start with yourself, you've basically given up on the species. That's what you're doing. You're not just giving up on yourself. I mean, you are giving up on humans into the future if you don't do this journey. And the benefit is if you do it, maybe you'll be a little happier in this
But
lifetime
when
and
you
get
talk like
and
that,
get
there's a lot of us that are in doldrums, you know?
yeah,
That's pretty scary thinking. Yeah.
there
Pretty
is,
scary
but
thinking when you think
but
like
but
that.
if you take it on,
Yeah.
okay, great. Now you're committing to actually preserving this species. Hopefully, you're adding your little cent in there of I'm going to do my work, but you're also hopefully going to get to a place of gratitude more and wholeness that you actually get to have this cool experience, be a little richer. That you get to have that, and that experience is that's a miracle that experience
It
to
really
go
is.
through life. And if you can take it in and
Mhm.
be grateful and really receive it, I mean that's a miracle. Now you're getting to witness the universe,
Mm.
and the universe gets to witness you, and that's a miracle.
That gave me chills because you're right. I think that's where humans, like, if we get there, that's there, you know? I don't want to get to that Buddha stuff. I like that, what you just said. That's a perfect living. That's it. That's life. Because
Yeah.
AI is pretty scary. AI is really scary and it's here and it's
Well,
a
it
lot of
comes
people
with
are
some
just
real
blinded by it.
dangers, but
Horrible,
but it
dangerous.
comes with, but the thing is, I'm not, I'm not, I believe in transcend and include developmentally throughout history. So like I'm not in the mindset of like, well, it would just be better to, be a caveman. Like that's a more spiritual experience and it's less struggle. Like I'm not in that perspective, but I am in the perspective that we, as you transcend and include and you get into innovation technology, you introduce a lot of struggle that you now have to transcend through. And so I believe technology will be our answer. It's going to be, technology is just innovation. So technology will
Mhm.
be our answer. I mean, medicine is technology. It's a form of
Of
technology.
course.
So I believe technology will be our answer for sure if we can live long enough to discover those technologies. Um, and then that will change culture, it will change worldviews, it will change old worldviews that are fundamentalist, that you know won't allow, don't allow us to come together if you're not in the in group, and those will go away over time. But this is going to be a road to get there, and there will be struggle and there will be fighting along the way, and that's where we are. We're still a species that it will be killing each other. Hopefully, we don't kill all of us.
Hopefully we don't.
Yeah,
Great
but I think
conversation
I
today,
think we'll get
Gito.
there.
I think we will
I'm
too. I
hopeful.
feel we will. I feel there'll be some of us that will get there.
I'm hopeful. In the end, it's sort of like, well, okay, whatever happens, happens. I mean, we're not going to know the difference, but
Never.
um, but we get to experience this right now, and that's the gift. So, and this isn't the only place this is happening. So, I mean, you talk to any really fucking smart astrophysicist, they're going to tell you it's really unlikely this is the only place this is happening. This is
If you
happening in
look at this,
many, many places in the universe.
look at the sky any time of the night. Where, I mean, what happens? This isn't us. There's so
I
much
mean,
more.
there's so many places that civilization has happened. That seems really
Hmm.
clear. I mean,
Doesn't
there's
it?
there's trillions of solar systems. I mean, there's billions of solar systems in our galaxy, hundreds of billions. So, there's trillions times hundreds of billions. And then the amount of chances isn't that high, but it's pretty close. So, yes, it's happening elsewhere. And yes, it's happened and all this. But, here we are thinking we're the only thing that exists. Like, that's,
Exactly.
it's a very
Can't you
limited
wait to see it?
worldview. It's a very limited
I don't know if
worldview.
we'll, very, so limited.
And
Keith,
if we are the only thing that exists, like that is pretty radical too.
even more remarkable. That's even good. That would
That's
even be
way
so bizarre.
crazier.
It'd be bizarre. Yeah,
That
way
would be
crazy.
way crazier than this.
Yeah,
This hasn't that than this has happened a billion times. Like way
yeah,
crazier would be this is the only time it's happened ever
yeah,
anywhere. Yeah.
yeah. Wait till they let the UFOs out. They're gonna let them out soon.
Yeah.
Everything's a cycle, man. Everything's a cycle. Keith, it was great talking to you today.
Cool.
Had a nice conversation. We'll
Yeah.
talk soon.
Thanks. Thanks.
Ciao. Stay on though, okay? Ciao.